All right, welcome.
Hi, welcome everyone to Grace Between Races. This is our eighth bi-weekly gathering, and we are here today to welcome our guest speaker, Lily-Rakia Chandler. And we can't wait to hear what she have to say about her experiences, her journey, and to share her wisdom with us. So welcome everybody. So to start with, usually I say to each one of us to kind of relax, take some deep breaths, and ground ourselves a little bit before we get started. So we could close our eyes and take some deep breaths. We could count to 4, hold for 2, and exhale for 4. And I would like maybe we could just focus on the throat chakra at this point. The center of expression and communication, so that we could feel grounded in speaking our truth. And expressing. And when we finish with that, we could open our eyes, and I would just read out the intro. And we know that this gathering, we hold space for raw, honest conversations where we can express our experiences both individually and express about inequalities between the races and how we are affected by them. Our vision and intentions are to look at ways in which we can create change, the kind of changes that our future generations will live together harmoniously with each other and with Mother Earth, understanding the oneness of all. And we have a few guidelines that we put in place so that we could, just keep things a little bit more structured. So this gathering is all inclusive. We speak from our heart about our experiences. We honor one another's truth. We should be mindful, encouraging, and supportive of others' truth as well. Be mindful of time, open to receive feedbacks. And of course, I mean, as I week from week to week, we emphasize the fact of, taking risks and with gratitude, and also keeping it light. And as heavy as some of the topics might be, I mean, life around us is full of stresses, and there's so much that work that is in front of us that, I mean, everybody is trying to do the best that they can, but at the same time, as I was just mentioning to Hillary, we have to understand that as hard workers, we need to have fun, we need to relax and enjoy life as well. It's necessary if we want to bring in more joy. We have to focus on experiencing and taking care of ourselves and loving ourselves and all of that stuff. It's part of, without the self, there is nothing. So I just want to bring that out and emphasize that we all coming from the one love, and no matter what is happening outside here and what steps we are taking to make it more peaceful and happy and enjoyable, we need to be the example of living, experiencing that joy too. Okay, so thank you very much. And I'll pass it on to Hillary to introduce Lily. And welcome everybody again.
Thanks, Anne. So
You're
we're not
welcome.
quite to introducing Lily. We'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little bit more introduction to do to
Okay,
invite us into the space. And
right.
I wanted to remind us, those of us who have joined before, I see Kathy's joined us here. Welcome. And I wanted to share that the inspiration for this gathering came um, mostly from Anne asking if we could continue this conversation, and also from a local Native elder teacher of mine, Strong Oak, who taught and continues to teach walking in balance as a Native reconciliation practice through talking circles. And so our practice of using the talking stick, and I have this talking stick here that I made, and also a slide that I'll bring up uh, a couple times during our gathering as a way of honoring that we're not doing exactly council practice, partly because we're here online and because we want to emphasize hearing from our guest and them sharing their wisdom with us. And yet that there is a practice, a lineage that we're a part of that is about being in a circle and listening to stories and creating reconciliation through heart sharings together. So also I wanted to invite us to get a little more grounded,
Yeah.
and as a way to begin that practice of grounding, I want to remind us that we are connected to the land. And before we do this grounding practice into the land, to honor the local Native people wherever we are. And so as I ring the bowl, I invite you to honor those Native people as you feel into the ground and the earth beneath you. And I also want to honor the Native people where I am, who are the Abenaki and the Pecumtuck and the Nipmuc. Thank you. And I also invite us to call in our own ancestors who have brought us to this place where we are, and all of the gifts and the gifts and the challenges and the challenges and the gifts that they have brought us, and that we are continuing to heal together. And lastly, I invite us to honor our guides and our guardians and benefactors, those who walk with us, who guide us, who support us, who are in body and who are not seen. So, honoring the wholeness of who we are in connection and in relationship, I invite us to feel our sits bones, feel our feet on the ground, feel that solid connection and our weight dropping in to the earth. And I invite you to move and breathe any way that supports you to feel that grounding and that arriving. You can take some deep breaths. You can stretch and move. That supports you. To feel that support and that structure and that solid holding from beneath that this earth has you. And I invite you to witness your breathing as you receive your experience on the in-breath. All thoughts and feelings, sensations, sounds, knowings. And then releasing it all down through the bones into the earth on the out-breath. Practicing this breath of receiving and releasing. Releasing down into the mother, our earth, just a couple days after Mother's Day, so we can continue to honor our mother every day and in honor of Mother's Day as well, along with the other mothers out there. And I invite you to breathe your roots down with that out breath now, down in to the earth, sending that taproot down, growing deeper stability and support. And then when you're ready on the in-breath, to breathe in the nourishment from our mother. Breathe it into your body. Fill yourself up with her support. Breathing her in, filling yourself up, not just a little bit, but all the way if you can. And you can move that earth nourishing energy throughout your body as well, with your breath and with your movement. Breathing it up into your heart, especially nourishing your heart at the center of your being. And feeling that beat of your heart, the consistency, that rhythm that carries the nourishment and the oxygen throughout your whole body to every last cell. And then I invite you to bring your attention to your crown. Feel the opening at the top of your head at this crown. And to open to the blessings of the sky. And to feel those blessings pouring in like warm honey. Flowing in and blessing every part of you, every single cell. And as it flows in, invite it to flow down through those roots that you grew into Mother Earth, and to illuminate those roots, to warm those roots, to bless those roots, and then to bless the earth as well through you. Feeling these blessings mixing with the earth through the vessel of your being. Honoring where you are right now, honoring all sensations, all knowings, all thoughts, all feelings. As we return to being together and opening in our eyes and honoring each other. So in this transition, I'm going to bring up the talking stick. Just a minute. And pass it along to Anne.
Okay. Good. Can you hear me? Great. Okay, so that was wonderful. Thank you very much, Hillary. That felt really good. So, yeah, I just wanted to say from last 2 weeks where Opiami spoke and what came up for me a little bit. It's basically her talking about at the end of her talk. She mentioned about she sang and she mentioned about lightning. Give the emphasis about lightening up. I mean, she touched on a lot of other things, but that this is what came up for me is the importance, and I was touching on it in the beginning, the importance of really lightening up and taking care of ourselves. And it's funny because Lolly B ran something down her page, and it was regarding self-care, and she asked the question, what does self-care look like for each and every one of us? And some people responded. And for me personally, self-care is really about finding ways to ground myself. And I mean, like, I'm getting back more into that now. One of the things that raises my energy is to be close to water and nature. And that makes me feel good, you know. And I plan this summer to do much more of that. And also taking the time to really connect with my inner self, taking that quiet space, and not just running around and doing meditation and here and there. I mean, like making an emphasis on taking time out to really focus on how am I feeling, where am I in this present moment, and really bringing back my energy towards, because sometimes I find like my energy is just spread all over the place, and like I'm just running around like a headless chicken. So it's just like gathering everything and bringing it back home and centering myself and really being in the moment, and I find, being in that space helps me to be more effective. And also it brings up, it's allowing whatever I'm experiencing to be in that. Sometimes it's not so good feeling sometimes, but the thing is, I'm validating my feelings. I'm in the present moment. And I believe it's much better to do that than to run into some kind of addictive behavior, whether it's shopping or overeating or something, which, I used to be emotional eater and all of that, and emotional shopper and all of that. So Rather than do that, instead of always looking for a way out, I look for a way in in this within this context, you know. And so now I'm coming within myself to make peace with whatever is there. And it's challenging, I know, but um, it's good work. At the end of the day, there's so much healing that comes from that. And yeah, and I really am thankful to Opiami for bringing that awareness back to me to really affirm that how important it is to really take care of the self, you know. And yeah, so this is my little saying. I mean, it's important for us to also be mindful of our connections around us, including family members, but mainly the connection within ourselves first, and then the connections we have around us. And it's okay to be wherever we are. It's okay because we work from that point forward. Then when you look at it and you see something is not working, then you could say, well, okay, what can I do here? What kind of changes I would like to see here? You know, it always starts with the self. We want us to heal the world, but the work starts right in front of us first, because we can't give from an empty cup. I mean, that's overspoken. I mean, it sounds cliche and everything, but it's the truth. How could you how could you help anyone if you're no good for yourself, you know? And so it's so important to really, really love, come from your loving space. Thank you very much. And I will pass it back on to Hillary. And if she have anything else to jump in and pitch in to say regarding that, to introduce Lily. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I don't have much to add. Just that OPME shared a lot with us and brought a lot of different elements. And um,
Right.
yeah, and I know that Lily-Rakia is bringing a whole lot as well in a different realm. And
Yeah.
I'm curious if you saw OPME's talk at all. No, that's okay. No worries. There's no need to have, but I was just curious if you had. Um, so, and to just let everyone know, you can watch the recordings on the YouTube page and on Grace Between Races as well. And they'll stay up as long as the internet works, I guess. All right. So at this point, I invite us to go around and to share our name. And I also invite us to share what we know of our ancestral heritage as well. Just to make it brief, just where your family comes from, whatever you know of that. Not to go into too much detail around it, just the place itself. And then also, if you have an intention for being with us tonight. So we'll go popcorn. If anyone wants to start, you can just unmute and share.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So my name's Kathy, and this is my first time finally making one of the meetings. So I'm happy to be here with you all. My intention for being here tonight is to get more connected to the world around me through the perspectives that are shared here. I appreciate the work that you've been doing, Hillary, to bring people together around these issues. And yeah, I just wanna accept this opportunity to be in conversation with people who I haven't met in person for the most part, but maybe I will someday. And my own history, my ancestry, I don't know much about. I'm told that I have German and Scottish, Native American heritage. I don't know much beyond that, but something I intend to look into.
Thanks so much, Kathy. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Miranda. This is also the first one I've been able to make. I finally finished my last undergrad paper, so I can be here. Yay. And I also really appreciate the work that Hillary's doing and want to see more of it, especially in the community of contact improv, authentic relating games, ecstatic dance, etc. And yeah, I don't know if this is considered an intention, but I like talking about issues that are important to me in these types of communities because of what we've already done, because we've started with a grounding, because there's certain understandings that make the educational and sharing experience more nourishing for me than just hearing a lecture. Like, I wish this is how college lectures were, with this type of setting and with grounding, and I think that would be really awesome. And both of my parents grew up in Greece, and their whole family's been in Greece, to our understanding. I have an Ancestry.com thing that my dad got me for Christmas that I haven't done yet, which I should have done because he's coming this weekend for commencement. But I'm pretty sure that, that includes a lot of Turkish, because Greeks used to be blonde hair, blue-eyed, and we're totally not now. So, and I go to Greece pretty frequently, so I feel pretty in touch. I feel very in touch with my other heritage.
Thanks, Miranda. Welcome.
Bravo.
And I just want to say, I'm not doing this alone, and Anne is doing this with me, and I couldn't do this alone. Like, it wouldn't make any sense. So I appreciate both your acknowledgement, and Anne and I are doing this, equally together. And yet I also know I know both of you. So that's your connection here. So thanks for coming. And I'll say I'm Hillary, and my intention, ooh, that was a very loud cling. Turn my phone off. But I'm here because, I'm here to learn how to hold space and be myself. And yeah, pretty much it. And to honor my friends as well. Okay, that means I really need to turn my phone off. And my ancestry is, my dad's British. Okay, even my phone turning off, that doesn't work. So, sorry. I'll have to figure out how to get those dings off. So my dad's British, and his ancestry is Norse, Celtic, Greek, Asian, and my mother has Eastern European, Polish mostly, and Baltic. Oh. I think maybe Anne is frozen. Yeah. Okay. So hopefully she'll come back. But Lily, would you like to share? You can also wait if you'd like to, but you're welcome to share your intention.
Well, first of all, I just want to say I really, it looks like I typed my name in wrong here. I would really prefer if people call me Lily-Rakia. The full name is my preference. That's so funny. I wonder, oh, rename. Here, I can fix it. Yay.
I noticed that too, and I was like, wait, okay.
Here we go. It must mean I'm human. Hallelujah. Okay, good. Fixed. So I'm Lily-Rakia, and my intention tonight is to share with you my particularly unique perspective as a very mixed heritage person, and to share with you some of my journey around the ways that I have been affected by racism, and other close people in my life have been affected by racism, and how I see everyone being affected by racism negatively, whether they're on the oppressor side or the victim side of that dynamic. And I'm really grateful to Anne and Hillary for inviting me. And my heritages are from every continent except for Antarctica. I used to joke around and be like, people be like, wait, what are you? And I'd be like, oh, basically everything except Southeast Asian and Australian. But then my mom got her DNA tested and apparently not. So I'll talk a little bit more about how I was raised and how I discovered different things, and how, more about that as I speak and share. But I think the heritages that I'll just talk about that more later. But it's good to be here with you all. Thanks for tuning in.
Thank you. So grateful you're here.
There's Anne.
Great. She's back. Would you like to share with us, Anne, if you can hear me, about your heritage and intention? I think she's trying to figure out how to get sound, probably. She's been having some phone troubles lately, so I think this isn't, maybe it's not even her phone. Oh, we can't hear you. Not yet. No, not yet. There might be a way for you to change your audio on the phone, like where it's coming through. Let's see. All right. No, I think it's not working yet. Well, I'm going to say, I'm going to introduce Lily-Rakia, and then Anne, after that, if you figured it out, then you can give your intro piece for your intention. All right. So I am so thrilled to have Lily-Rakia here. I think you're probably one of the friends that I spend the most time with at this point, because we have a regular meeting together every week. And so I get to know quite a bit of what's going on in your life and your story more and more. And I'm really grateful to have you in my life as a friend, and also to be in different spaces with you and to get to know you in different ways. And so how I know you is through mostly to the dance community. And I want to acknowledge that we've also sang together, and she's an amazing musician, an amazing dancer, and writes her own music inspired by reggae and Jewish music and Celtic music, and I'm sure many other things, and channels beautiful, beautiful songs. And she also has been the founder of the Child Whisperers, which is a parent coaching and caregiver professional development program. And she has done that through many years of working in Waldorf schools, and I'm sure there's a lot more that she can share about what's brought her here, as well as being a mother of an amazing son, Raphael, and also deepening in her relationships with her many different communities that she's a part of. And so I'm looking forward to hearing more about her experience from these many different communities and heritages. And I just want to say right now that she has a group on Facebook, and I'm sure she'll talk a little bit about that and how you can stay connected. So thank you for bringing yourself, all of yourself, to be with us today. And I invite you to share whatever you feel called to share about.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a very warm welcome. So, yes, again, I'm Lily-Rakia Chandler, and I invite anyone who's interested to link up with me on Facebook and continue the conversation, because this work is near and dear to my heart. And even though I'm very much focused at this time on parents and caregivers in particular, the reason that I'm so focused on them is because I feel like that is a place where we have a big chance to be really conscious and aware of how we pass down information, and a big opportunity to shift the way that we view each other and we view the world and we interact with each other. And it is, from what I've studied and experienced and learned, both from working with young children and working with adults on their early trauma, it is the place where racism sets in on very unconscious levels, for everyone. And so, but first, before we get there, that's sort of the end of the story. The beginning of the story is where I want to begin. And the beginning of the story actually happened long before I was even born. And there was many stories, because as I shared, I am of so many different peoples. I'm Mohawk Haudenosaunee, and that's native to North America, First Nation people. I'm Jewish, both Eastern European Jewish, Sephardi Jewish, which is like between Spain and Morocco, and Mizrahi, like North African, and more Persian Jewish. So right there, we got a lot of coverage. I also have Irish heritage. I also have Scottish heritage. I also, according to my uncle's test, found out I also have some Scandinavian heritage. And yeah, the list goes on. I have some Indian heritage. I have some Australian indigenous. And it's really interesting because, you know, growing up, the message that I got that was very confusing for me at the time, though my parents were very well intentioned, is like, you can pass for white, but you're not really white, but don't tell anyone. And that was very confusing. And I know that it came from the best of intentions of wanting to help me understand the complexity of who we are as a family. And you know, I was raised in a Jewish community, a very liberal Jewish community that tried really hard to be inclusive of all different kinds of people, interfaith families. My dad is my native side, and his, you know, he actually did end up choosing to convert to being Jewish, but you know, there was a lot of work done to try to be inclusive, yet there was a lot of ways that even though I felt like I fit in there, I also felt like I didn't. And this happened to me all through my life when I went to various communities that I knew. I have heritage here. Like, I spend a lot of time in the Native community, and there's a lot of people that are very welcoming and, you know, really acknowledge me and fully accept me as a Native person. And then there's others that are a little bit like, but you're not like other Native people. And I had a lot of community from a very young age in the African heritage world as well, where I also got a lot of, you're not like other white people. You're not really white, for better or for worse. And then from white people, I also got like, you're not really white. And it's really interesting the effects that had on me as a young person and growing up, especially without a lot of places to really talk about it and process what does that actually mean. Luckily, as I came into adulthood, my passion around ending racism and that topic as such a pertinent thing for me, because of my love and connection to so many different communities, became bigger and bigger, and I became really involved in talking about it and processing it and really doing the work and tracing back my ancestry and and realizing the importance of it, and deciding to go and learn my native language and learn about my various cultures. It really brought me to this place where I realized, there was all these ways that being mixed heritage had led me to feel like I didn't belong anywhere. And like, I wasn't white enough to be white. I wasn't Black enough to be Black. I wasn't Native enough. I wasn't Jewish enough. It was always this like percentage thing. Well, what percent are you? And the truth is, you can't actually cut people up into percents. You can't actually do that. If you don't have the whole person, you don't have the person. And blood quantum is something that's been really, really dangerous to Native people in terms of invalidating their nativeness, and also to people of African heritage with the 1-drop rule. It's like, you're 1-drop African, you're Black, and that's part of the I believe the social construct of racism, where it benefits the dominant culture to have more Black people to take resources from and use as labor in all the horrible ways that has happened and still happens. And it's more beneficial to the dominant society, white society, that to have less Native people, because then there's no one to give the land back to. There's no one to give the resources back to that they stole. And so that's why I believe that dynamic has occurred. And then there's also the issue of cultural appropriation and people that are Native, raised Native on the reservation. Many people feel really strongly about, if somebody's, has one grandparent or distant relative that was Native, they can't just come back and claim everything without really doing the work and decolonizing. And so I think it's important to understand all these little intricacies of that situation. However, I also know that if I was to just be like, oh yeah, I'm just white, that's the responsible thing to do, just be white because I can pass for white. First of all, that would not push me to work on my white privilege. Second of all, I have done that, but second of all, it would actually be, it would not be owning and loving the parts of me that are not that. And truly, whiteness and Blackness are social constructs that exist because of the establishment of racism on purpose, for the purposes of slavery and exploitation. And not to say that doesn't mean there aren't white people and there aren't Black people, but if you were to see a mixed heritage family, you could see within one immediate family, a child that has blonde hair, blue eyes, looks totally white, and another one that looks totally Black. And there are even cases of twins. I had some twins in one of my classes this past fall that I was honored to be taken care of, and there was 2 little boys, and they had a Black mom and a white dad, and one of them had blonde hair and blue eyes, the other one had brown kinky hair and brown eyes, and they looked just alike, their features, but if you saw them separately, you'd be like, oh, Black, white. And that's how it goes sometimes, being mixed heritage. And it can be very hard, because within the family, even, there can be dynamics of like, oh, like, you're the good one and you're the bad one. And that did happen a little bit for me in my family, very, very unconsciously, very subtly. And I'm sure that I played into it with my own rebellious ways. But me and my sister, people still today sometimes like think we're twins or mistake us for each other, but I don't burn in the sun. I have darker complexioned brown hair, brown eyes, and she has blonde hair and blue eyes. And so it's very interesting. But, and then there's the other piece, which is a lot of people assume that Native American people all look red. And even Native people raised on the reservation fully in their tradition, there are many very light-skinned Native people with even blonde hair and blue eyes. So it's a lot more complicated than the social constructs would like us to see it as. And I think that that's an important thing to express, because it is really important for white people and people who have white privilege or pass as white to work on that, to work on the like understanding what that means and why life is easier for them in certain ways within the dominant culture. You know, for instance, you know, I can walk into a store, especially if I dress really normal, notice the quotes. You know, I can walk into a store and I'm not going to be profiled, or I can drive around and not get pulled over in the same way that my brothers and sisters with darker skin, you know, do. And that's real, you know, but at the same time, you know, I irk people because I don't fully fit into a box. And so I have been targeted with racism in certain ways. So I have both gone to groups to work on white privilege, as well as gone to many groups as a person of color and as a person of what I call the global majority, because the majority of people in the world are not white, and gotten to have the support of being involved in those groups as well. And let's see what else I want to make sure I cover here before I get too far out on a tangent. I took some notes. Yeah, so I used to really feel like I didn't fit anywhere. And even in my own town growing up outside of Boston, people would look at me like I was just like an alien walking down the street. And the funny thing was, I didn't realize till later on, they were actually the ones that were aliens, if anybody was, because they weren't even from here. But, you know, it wasn't their fault. They were confused just like I was confused. And a lot of people are just really confused. Like, you know, we don't talk about these things. We don't give children space to process their feelings. Even if we do talk to them about it, oftentimes we just talk at them. Oh, this is what you should do. And a lot of people get into this dominant culture way of thinking where it's like, okay, what's the right thing to do? How do I be a good white ally? Or how do I be a good, you know, Black person that's not going, you know, assimilated? Or how do I be a good Jewish person, or whatever it is? You know, there's all these ways that people are like really trying to think. And the truth is, we're all still really steeped in this very racist dominant culture. And so even though many of us have done amazing work and phenomenal work on reclaiming who we are, and, you know, finding our Afrocentric communities to be in, and finding our Native-centric communities to be in, and doing the decolonization, and even white folks, you know, looking back to their roots and learning about their Irish and Celtic pagan ceremonies, and, you know, doing Beltane and doing, you know, or I have a friend who, she's Italian, and she was a really amazing ally to some Native activist projects around here, Building Bridges mural project over at the Great Falls. And she ended up going back to Italy and exploring her Native roots there. And now she's studying Italian, and she's got all these connections. I mean, it's amazing what you can do. You don't have to be a Native person to North America, to Turtle Island, to do this work. You don't have to, you know, and, you know, people. So, and it can be really, really painful doing this kind of work, because, you know, for a lot of people, because of genocide and because of slavery and because of all these things, it's not easy to trace back and even know where you were from, or maybe you're from many different places. You know, I've spent time in Israel, Palestine. I've spent time in the Mohawk Valley. I've spent time in various places that I have heritage, and it's a really powerful thing, but it's also, it brings up all the grief of what has happened to my people. And so it's something that, it's not a light thing, but it can be light on the other side if you're willing to go in and do that work and process those feelings. The liberation that comes from that is just unbelievable. And I am really grateful for my vast support system of people that are doing this work with me, because I've really been able to process a lot of the deep grief around what has happened to my peoples. And it's really given me the ability to think much more flexibly about the whole thing, and really see that no one involved is actually benefiting, even if temporarily the dominant people, whether it's the white people or the Gentiles in case of the Jews, you know, or whatever, benefit temporarily by gaining resources and land and power and this and that, ultimately they're very hurt, and they have to be very hurt, and they continue to hurt their children very badly in order to get them to believe that it's actually okay to act this way towards other human beings. And in order to do those things and feel like it's okay, you actually have to be very hurt. And what often happens is then in those communities, the internalized racism, the internalized anti-Semitism plays out towards ourselves. And so it hurts everybody. It doesn't, in the end, benefit anyone, because like Anne was saying at the beginning, we are all connected to our mother, the earth. We're all connected. We're all one family. And so, ultimately, that's where we want to like work out this dysfunction and really figure out how to be so much more connected and acknowledge each other's humanness, but at the same time acknowledge where we've been and what we've been through. And it's big, it's big what we've done to each other, what we've done to ourselves, what we've done to each other in our own communities because of internalized racism. There's some serious issues with suicide in the Jewish community, in the Native community, and in the African heritage community. There's serious issues with addiction and drugs, and that goes across the board to every community. And it's that level of disconnection from each other and disconnection from our humanity and our connection with spirit and our connection with the earth that leaves us feeling so much pain and so much emptiness and so much loneliness, that drives us to do the things that end up being destructive to our own bodies, our own lives, our own connections to all of the various peoples, whether we have a heritage with them or not, and from the earth, which is really essential for all of us. And even though it can be painful to go into those feelings and have those feelings and express those feelings, it's ultimately what's going to get us to be able to fully connect again with ourselves and with each other. I really liked what you said, Anne, about connecting with how important it is to take time each day to connect with ourselves. So yeah, all through my life, just my very existence basically challenges people's understanding of the racial construct and just kind of blows it to smithereens, because I'm not really Black, but I'm not really white. So take that in for a second. I really love the Anishinaabe medicine wheel that's become more and more popular across many Native cultures. I guess it's, I can't claim that it's only Anishinaabe, but that's where I've done most of my studying around it. But maybe you've seen it. It's a circle that has black, white, yellow, and red. So I love that image because it shows the unity of all four races. And there's lots and lots of teachings about that, which I won't get into here. But when I finally came more deeply into understanding with that image, I was like, that's me. That's an image that includes me. And that felt really good. And what I learned over time is that, it's not, instead of going around feeling like I don't belong anywhere because I'm not fully enough anything for any one of these groups, I realized that actually I belong everywhere, and that actually we all belong everywhere. And that doesn't mean we can dominate everywhere and be entitled to be everywhere, but that does mean that we belong to this earth, and that when we come humbly to any tradition, to any community, and really humbly ask to join, it's more than likely that they will accept, and that they will be happy to share and to teach if approached in the right way. And one of the benefits that I realized finally through my processing and my experience is that the fact that I am, sort of peripherally a part of all these different communities makes me sort of like a Spider Woman, where I weave the web and I help them understand each other, and I help them understand, there's a lot of communities I've been a part of where people have never met a Jew before. All they know is the propaganda. All they know is the stereotypes, or they've never met a Native person before. All they know is the stereotypes. They don't even, a lot of them are like, really? I thought they were all dead. So that happens. And it's not true, but the segregation is what really makes it harder for all of us to figure out how to know each other, how to respect each other, how to get along with each other, what are culturally sensitive ways of interacting, you know, because it's just, you know, just going by the white dominant culture won't work. It won't work. And, you know, part of the reason that I feel very at home in the African American community is because I've spent a lot of time with African American people since a very young age, and Caribbean people, and I've learned what is socially acceptable in that community. And it's different. Or in the Jewish community, I've learned, you know, in the Native community, it's different. And yet, beneath all of the cultural norms and the cultural differences, we're all really the same more than anything else. We all want love. We all want connection. We all want our families to be safe and well. We all want education, sometimes different education, but because education can be dangerous, which is part of why I became a teacher and really am into educating parents and teachers about being very mindful of the unconscious ways that we pass down certain racist, anti-Native, anti-Semitic ideas, among other things, classism, etc., homophobia. A lot of it's very subtle, very unconscious. And I'm not going to blame teachers or parents either, because everyone out there is doing their best, and to choose to be a parent and a really like dedicated parent, or to choose to be a teacher, is a huge undertaking, not well resourced, not well paid, not well respected, given tons of children, not a lot of time or energy or resources to figure out how to make it work. So that's part of what I'm doing out there with the Child Whisperers organization. Let's see, I'm gonna look at my notes for a second, see if there's anything I missed. Yeah, I guess I just want to say that before we open it up for more questions and discussion, is that just to be really clear that like racism is white supremacy, and white supremacy hurts us all, because truly there is no white. We all were once indigenous to somewhere. And that doesn't mean that we can just skip back over all the years of colonization that have happened to our people and that we've done to other people in response to that, because that's often how trauma gets handed down, is once it happens to you, then unconsciously you either keep letting it happen to you, or you start going around and find somebody else to do it with, which is part of how it happens for young children, unfortunately. Is young children, no matter how privileged they are dominated by adults. And in that domination process, the child then, and it's usually unintentional. There's certainly times that it isn't, unfortunately, but a lot of adults, well-intentioned adults, think they're doing the right thing by dominating children, and they don't understand how to, even the best intentions ones that are trying to like really give them all the freedoms and the love and the space, often don't understand that giving too many choices to a very young child can be traumatizing and overstimulating in a way that isn't respectful to them as who they are. And so what then often happens is that those young children are looking for someone to let their feelings out on, because they're angry and they're sad and they can't, and the adults don't have the presence and the groundedness to hold space for that often, especially if it's in response to something they did. They're probably going to feel defensive. And so then children start picking on each other, and then they look around and they start imitating what they're seeing in the world. And if they're like, oh, okay, so those brown people, it's okay to treat them worse because that's just what adults do, so I'll do that too. And then they start, and it's very unconscious. It's very unconscious. Or, oh, like, you cry easily, so I'm going to pick on you because, I can push your buttons and get you to cry. And it's so innocent, but it's so real, and it's not okay. And adults don't really know how to get in there with young people a lot of times and really help them process their feelings and realize what they're doing. And it's not a matter of like getting in there and shaming and blaming either, because that's not actually going to help the situation. It's very, very subtle, very complicated. And that's why I call it the Child Whispers, because it's one of those things that you can learn a lot of basic concepts about. And I do a lot of videos on my page about that and about various topics of parenting. And I'm sorry, I turned my phone off, but I don't know how to turn the other notifications off. Anyways, but yeah, so it's a really big thing, and I've done a lot of study and observation with children, as well as counseling grown-ups on the ways that they were hurt as children that then laid in racism, whether they're a white person and feeling, unconsciously racist and having like feelings about white supremacy purposely or not, mostly not purposely, the people I work with, and really understanding where that comes from and how that got laid in and how they got hurt into being actually believing that stuff. And as much as they didn't want to and still don't want to. And I've also done a lot of counseling with people of the global majority or people of color about noticing the effects of racism and how they can recover from that and how they can see them, affecting the way that they treat themselves. Like, I love what you're saying about self-care. And I just want to affirm that self-care is an act of resistance. Self-care is in exact opposition to the dominant culture way of trying to treat people as machines and as cogs in a wheel to build upon. And it's not necessary. There's absolutely enough abundance possible in the world for everyone to have their basic needs met and then more. And so that's what I am going for. That's the vision that I'm holding up, and that I would love for you all to be part of holding up with me. That there is absolutely enough resources if we were to get organized and clear and decolonize for everyone to have what they need and more, that we could be dancing and singing and drumming and doing our rituals and sharing our rituals with each other and, having a whole blast and eating all sorts of delicious foods. I mean, can you just imagine how rich the world would be if we all really had each other, if we all had friends and family from every nation where we could feel fully connected, fully belonging, fully not entitled, but validated to be with and connecting with all different kinds of people. Just imagine how rich your life could be if we all had that. So with that, I will just say once again, thank you so much. And I am looking forward to hearing questions, comments, whatever other folks want to say. Because, yeah, let's do it.
Well, thank you so much, Lily-Rakia, for all of that wisdom spouting from your heart and from your experience, and just the grounded stability that you bring. It's just so nourishing. And that's what I'm feeling now in myself. And I don't always feel that on Grace Between Races. Sometimes it can be a little bit more like, and maybe that's because I feel so comfortable with you. And I want to just honor you and how you're able to do that with many people and so many communities. So that's a huge gift.
I'm glad it looks that way.
It feels
that's the idea. That's the idea.
But, yeah, your spirit is very strong. Yeah. So, Anne, take it away. Anything you want to share?
Oh, I hear you. Oh, I can't hear you. Sadness. I can see you though.
Yeah. Oh, unfortunate. I thought I heard her voice for a minute, but well.
I wonder if you might be able to type in the chat. We could read it out at least.
Yeah. Yeah, we can't hear you at all, unfortunately. I wish I understood what was going on with your phone, but I don't know Zoom for phones that well.
I know when I call in via my phone, I have to select the option of calling in via device audio, which kind of sounds like you're just going to get on like via phone call. style, but you actually need to select that in order to have audio. So I don't know if she could back out of the meeting and call back in and make sure and select that.
Yeah. Maybe it seems like she's frozen right now.
Mm.
So, anyways, we've been kind of dealing with this for a while. I want to, I'll share a little bit more about this later, but one of the next steps that we're doing with Grace Between Races is to help Anne. We're going to do a fundraising campaign to help her get her computer fixed. So,
Mhm.
yeah, really important. We can't hear you. Oh,
How ironic.
yeah, I know.
Wonder. Oh, I think she's gonna try calling back. It looks like.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully, maybe she could at least type in the chat. We could read it. out.
I think it's hard to do that on a phone. It might be possible,
Oh,
but
yeah.
I'm not sure how. Anyways, when she comes back on, hopefully she can share some. But I actually was unpacking my bowl on my way, just getting home from this past weekend, and I found this owl feather in it, and it helped me to think of Lily-Rakia. And
Can you hear me now?
Oh,
yeah,
yes.
yay. Okay.
Yeah, I just had to go out and come back in.
Yeah, we can't see your face.
My face.
Yeah.
There we go. Oh,
No, she's frozen.
Okay.
there we go.
Yay. You're sideways. Okay.
Okay. So I just wanted to say quickly that Lily-Rakia, that was beautiful. I really enjoyed what you said about connections. And are you hearing me now?
Yes. Yes.
Great, great. And by the way, I love the name of your group, which is Child Whispers. It's awesome. I want you to really emphasize a little bit about why you chose that name for the group. It sounds awesome. And I didn't get to introduce myself in the beginning when everybody was introducing because I wasn't hearing. And I am from Trinidad originally, and my parents. I grew up with grandparents, not my parents, but I knew my parents where they were, and my father. I'm kind of like you in a certain way, but not exactly. Okay, because I don't have that expanse of mixture, but I'm a little bit. So well, of course, my grandfather on my father's side is French, because what a lot of people don't know about the Caribbean, probably they do, is about the Caribbean is we like a melting pot, especially Trinidad, and a lot of people will appear like pure black, but they have, which is all over the world basically. I'm saying Trinidad, but it's really like we all have something else, going behind the background. So the thing is, but in my case, it's French and Spanish. So, but I grew up with my grandparents, and even though I grew up in a majority Black environment, we weren't educated to really see, to really be like segregated from people and all of that. I grew up in an environment that was very accepting and very caring. Of course, it had a lot of problems. I'm not saying that we didn't have internal issues, but the environment itself there was some separation, or what you would call racial disparity between Indians, East Indians, and it still manifests in Trinidad today, and Blacks. I mean, even though we intermarriage and all of that, but there are these names that we grew up hearing, and people feeling more superior because they're more East Indian and blah blah blah. The whole thing. I mean, we understand the whole racism thing across the board in India and all of that too, you know. So, but very loving environment. I mean, I grew up. My next door neighbor was East Indian, and I remember my neighbor. I used to sleep with in their house, and they would come and sleep in at our home, and we would be playing all these games. And when like they have somewhere to go and they had no one to take care of the kids, they would all be by us. I mean, it was very, very like, you know, like together in that sense, you know. And so that saying, I feel very rich in that sense that I have that experience. And, you know, on the other hand, when I came to North America, um, I'm in Montreal, and so there was a whole other dynamic because, hey, I ain't nothing else but, you know, like, you know, English, and then I speak English, so it's even worse because, you know, you have the French dynamic going on here with language and the whole shebang. So it's a lot of different things that I had to face. And so just experiencing all those things, I mean, I come to the conclusion that, you know, for me personally, I'm a human being. I don't care what people see on the outside, that's their perspective, but just knowing who I am inside is so important, you know. And I think this is why in the beginning of Grace Between Races, I emphasize the fact of each of us doing the inner work. It's so important to confront our own biases, our own insecurities, our own fears, all of that stuff. Nobody outside could do that work for us, you know. And so it starts there, and then we could like fill it out outside. It actually fills out outside when we do the work, you know. So I applaud you in taking the challenge of going into your, I haven't done my ancestral background blood-wise yet, but that's something I feel that, you know, in the future I would like to do. So, but taking the opportunity to exploring all your heritage, and I think you're doing an excellent job based on what you shared earlier, and you know, just seeing the different perspective from each of these groups. I mean, it's so dynamic and rich at the same time. I mean, obviously, yes, there are suffering, but it could be so rich, you know. And I am so, so, so with you on the abundance thing. And if we could, you know, I know Jerry asked about the good, sweet side of this whole experience, like when are we going to really bring it together, you know? It would be so beautiful, and the abundance that could come from people working together. Imagine it, just the imagination of all this richness that we all have and we all carry around. If we could pool that and make it work for everybody, I mean, wow, that boggles my mind, and that's who I am. I feel that internally is who we are as people. That's what we really crave deep down, is that one, because that's the way it's supposed to be. And we've lost our way for a very, very long time. And obviously, it's going to take some time for us to work through the kinks, but I believe it's possible. And I'm setting that intention for my future generations down the line, everybody included. It's possible. But we've got to go through the kinks in order to get there. We've got to be honest, we've got to be raw and stop pussyfooting around, pretending that it didn't happen. This is cancerous, okay? Carrying secrets and lies are cancerous. It doesn't work. It will not work. It haven't worked in the past, and it will never work in the future. I don't care how much money you accumulate. I don't care. You know, you could stay safe in your mansion and pretend that you have all the big cars, all the nice TVs, all the this, all of that. But if everyone around you is hungry, you in hell.
Right.
You know, you're in literal hell. So how much better it would be to share everything around and everybody's happy and that energy is just empowering everybody and everybody is smiling and embracing each other. That's life. That's biting into it. Maybe I'm being a little bit idealistic here, but I don't know. I still have my kid magical thinking in my being. So, but I think we've lost that and we need to get back some of that. You know.
Absolutely.
And yes, and you're doing wonderful job working with kids. I see it manifesting a lot in around me with children, how parents, including myself, I mean, I've done it, I'm guilty, you know, it's because, as you say, it's so subtle. Some of these habitual behaviors, we only see it evolving when it becomes very problematic later on, but a lot of it goes under the radar. Like there are stuff that I apply that I didn't even know I was doing that until later on when I started to see my own behavior reflecting back to me from my kids, you know, and I'm like, wow, this is ugly. This is not that. Sometimes it's not easy for a parent to admit their own, you know, when they see it reflecting in their kids, it's not easy for parents to admit that, listen, that's me, that's just coming back to me, you know, my behavior coming back to me. It's not easy, it's challenging. But it could be the catalyst for change. You know, it could be the thing that pushes us to say, let me do it different, you know, because it causes a lot of suffering for our children. It destroys them. So thank you for bringing all that goodness and all that wisdom and, you know, your whole journey. And you're still so young. So, which is, I mean, amazing job. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. It's such an honor to get to share this. I was a little nervous, as you know, but I'm realizing that it was really worth it, and I'm so glad. Oh, and your question about the child whisperers.
Right.
So, so when I first started doing the everyday videos, which was only a few months ago, February, I started doing live videos every day of me just talking about parenting and caregiving and different ways of thinking about it and addressing different common issues that people had. And one of my friends, who also was a parent at the school I used to teach at, she was sharing the videos on her page and saying, "This is my friend Lily-Rakia. She's a child whisperer." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's such a nice compliment." And then, so I thought, I'm like, oh, maybe I should call it the child whisperer. But I was like, but it's really not about me.
Yeah.
You know, I do have the ability to communicate with children and understand them in ways a lot of people don't, because I've practiced and learned certain things. Right. But it's really, the reason I'm doing this isn't to like be like, hey, everyone, I'm so great, you should pay me. But like, actually, like, you know, like to really raise up anyone who's ready to take it on and wants to learn those things for their children to heal their ancestry and to change the direction of the oppression in their, whether it be as the oppressor or as a victim or as both, which pretty much everyone is ultimately, that to change that trajectory and to change that pattern and those patterns instead of to pass them down, to really do the work to heal their ancestors and their descendants. And it's very powerful. And becoming a child whisperer, whether you're a parent, a teacher, or even just an ally to parents and children, and you know, really that the old saying of it takes a village to raise a child, it's really true. And it's also true that the village raises the child whether they're paying attention or not. So no matter how hard a parent works and no matter how hard they try, if they can't surround themselves with like-minded people, whether it be in person or even online, if that's all they have, that's better than nothing. So I'm going to type in the comments right now. This is a link to my parent support group. And it's generally, it is for parents, but if you're not a parent and you're interested in the work that I'm doing and you want to be involved in the group, I will not exclude you. I actually just was recently thinking I wanted to change the name, and I haven't done it yet. I'm not sure whether I'm going to change the name or start a new group, but really make it focused around It Takes a Village, because it really takes all of us to raise our children in the right way. And if we all take responsibility and learn how, then we're going to be able to do a much better job being the change we want to see the world becoming. And so
Wow.
that's where the name comes from.
Exactly. Thank you very much for that. Lovely work.
So welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think it would be amazing to have that other group, because I'm not a parent, and I would love to be a parent someday. And I'm practicing spending time with children, doing singing and dancing every week. And I have a lot of friends who have parents, and I'm definitely wanting to learn more. And I find the deeper that I go into myself and find my own inner child, the more comfortable I am with children, and that I just feel connected to them. And it's not such an issue. And of course, I don't have to live with the children, and they're not this like extension of me, and I can only imagine what that brings up. And so also doing the work with my own parents and healing with my parents, I think is, for me as an only child, is really a huge key for my own healing work. And I was just saying before Anne popped on that I found this owl feather, and Lily-Rakia and she taught me this beautiful, it's called the Skolagi dance. Is that how you pronounce it?
Salagi, which is the real name of the Cherokee people.
Salagi.
Yeah,
which includes an eagle and an owl. And she shared it with me. We had this beautiful eagle sighting over us, and and so the eagle is really there giving us this vast perspective, and the owl, I'm just going to mute who's ever not unmuted because I was getting some feedback, for me really represents this like deep inner feminine wisdom and doing that inner work. And I see you doing that all the time, and I know for myself that's the way forward. And so when we can create spaces like this, we're taking a step towards doing that. And I wanted to just encourage again that if we can create more groups, more spaces of, maybe it's this particular group of this heritage, so that we can come together and we can feel belonging, and make it even more specific, so that then one can own our own experience within that. And so that was the inspiration coming through. And I'm just curious from your own perspective around doing a lot of co-counseling work, where there is emphasis on these subcultures or subgroups coming together. I'm not sure exactly the words that you use in that community, but I know there's a lot of structure around how that happens, and maybe to share a little bit around that structure and how to create safe space and support people who might feel inspired to start a group like that, who may not know about co-counseling or who may not have had a lot of experience doing that before.
Sure. So there are groups that it's this whole like underground grassroots kind of movement that anyone can join, but in order to join, you have to either know someone or you have to get interviewed, because the idea is that we want people that both are ready to work on hard feelings and hard things and their pressure material as well as their victim material, and also have the ability to be grounded enough and present enough to listen to others, because everyone is trained as a counselor and as a client. But it's very different than traditional counseling, because there's no hierarchy. There's no it's like you spend half the time, or, you portion out the time so everyone gets equal time, equal to be the client as well as to be the counselor. And one of the things that's so profound about it is that the counselor, being the counselor is just as healing in my experience as being the client, because oftentimes I can listen to someone in their despair, in their place of hopelessness, and I can be like, oh yeah, but I can tell it's not hopeless for you. So then that helps me be able to turn around and be like, oh, so that must mean it's not actually hopeless for me. That's just a feeling. That's a feeling I have because of the devastation of what's happened to me and what's happened to my people, but it's not actually reality. And so that's just, in a nutshell, a little bit about what the co-counseling movement is about. And yes, it's very much based on ending oppression through doing this embodied emoting and processing. And it is controversial. People have a lot of feelings about it. Some people love it. Some people hate it. Some people are like, is that a cult? But for me, it's the place that I have found the most people really seriously taking on dismantling oppression on every level. And the two main goals of the community right now, the two main focuses of all the different ones, are ending racism and care of the environment, and how they actually go hand in hand. And so, yes, there are a lot of support groups and workshops that are specifically for white people ending racism, people of the global majority working on racism, specifically Asian people, specifically Black people, specifically Jewish people. There's gay workshops. There's support groups around sexism and male domination. There's support groups, and workshops on all sorts of different topics, classism, and people get together and they share time and they counsel each other, and they do big groups things. And it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing what they do. But one of the most cutting edge people I know, who is an amazing African heritage woman, and I'm not going to say her name here because it's one of those things where it's confidential. Not everybody wants the whole world to know that they're involved in this because of mental health oppression, because it's seen as this weird thing of like, oh, those people are like having their feelings, they must be crazy or something, which I don't believe. That's mental health oppression. But I'm not going to name names because of that. But there is a really amazing African heritage woman who's a leader in the area where I live. And she has been doing it for like 30 plus years or something. And she actually has decided to start doing groups of all different kinds of people together working on racism, because she really has seen that even though it does feel safer to sometimes work on this thing, where white people can be with other white people, and if they're showing their nasty oppressor material, it's a maybe like, maybe it's safer to do that because they don't have to worry about offending or making a person of the global majority think that they're so racist. But you know what? Everyone's racist. Like everyone's racist, no matter how hard you try not to be. Everyone is, because we're just steeped in this culture, and unconsciously there's all these subtle little things, whether that happen. And so she's started having us get together separately first, but then having groups all integrated of people working on racism, because what happens is as long as you have enough close relationships with the people there, and the understanding that everyone is fundamentally good beneath all the racist patterns that they've inherited, or the internalized racism that they've inherited. And so, when it's too safe, when it's too comfortable, people also don't move ahead with their material. And so it's about finding that sweet spot of being pushed to be uncomfortable enough to really look at the places that you're not comfortable. Like a lot of white folks are not comfortable around Black people. They're just not. And they don't want to admit it. They don't want to show it. They just don't hang out with Black people because it makes them uncomfortable. And if they do, they can tell a lot more where the unconscious racism is, even though they don't want to be that way, even though they don't like it, they can feel it. They can feel that uncomfortableness of like, oh, I don't want anyone to think I'm racist, so I'm going to act even weirder, is what usually ends up happening. She's laughing because she knows exactly what I'm talking about. And so there's this way, though, that we've figured out, like her and I were talking about this, and I was like, if we get together and we say to the white folks, like, we love you, we know you're here because you want to heal this stuff, you don't have to hide it, you don't have to like spend your whole session proving to us that you're good and that you're friends with Black people, like, just let's do it, you know? And so this was this great epiphany we had together that was like, oh, okay, this could be good. So we're still in the process of working on that. But I do think there is a lot of value of people of the same heritages coming together and working on their own stuff, and that is an important place to start. However, there's also a lot of benefit to doing things like this, where we have all different kinds of people coming together and just getting real about it, and noticing where it feels awkward, and noticing where it feels hard, and noticing where it feels amazing, because it's so rich to be together in the world and not be segregated into our little bubbles. So.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a great way to see what you're up to in that group, which you shared a little bit with me before, and I'm just excited that that's happening, and hope that grows, and I'm really hopeful for moving down to Hartford personally, that I'll have more of a chance to have these conversations with people of all different backgrounds, and I'm maybe going to look for a group like that as well. So thank you. And I have one more question that came up for me, which when you were saying, like, we're all racist, were you meaning like all people or all white people? Because I've heard from different trainings that if you're not white, you can't be racist, because white supremacy is racism. And so those of us who are benefacting, or, you know, we're being benefacted, what I'm like struggling to say this word, but we're beneficiaries of the white culture. Like, we are the ones who are racist, rather than people of color who can have internalized oppression. And, you know, there's people who say different things. So I'm just curious about your perspective on that.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for bringing up the opportunity to clarify on that. So when I say we're all racist, I definitely mean all white people are racist, and all people are affected by racism, which is to say that, you know, in my communities of people of color, people of the global majority, there is internalized racism that looks really similar to white racism. And I'm not talking about not liking white people. That's a different thing. I don't consider that racism. That's prejudice, but that's not racism. So I agree with you that racism and white supremacy is specifically from the dominant culture of white people towards people of color. That's personally how I feel comfortable talking about it, because I think it's important to remember that that is the dynamic. But what I will say is, within the communities of people of color, there is, you know, people get treated differently if they're lighter or darker skin, or if they have more European features versus more African or Asian features. And people, you know, do things like lighten their skin or straighten their hair or wear wigs because of the beautification industry and how it has been affected by white supremacy and preferring towards European features and European hair and European, you know, and, you know, again, I'm not trying to judge anybody here. Like, people, you know, I think it's really important for women to do whatever they want to feel beautiful. And even if that is affected by a Eurocentric, you know, thing of beauty, we're still in a very complicated place with all this. So I'm not saying that like every African heritage woman has to grow dreadlocks or have afro in order to love herself. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that like it's important to understand that the beautification industry is working within the realms of white supremacy. Sorry, I'm going on a tangent here. The point is, what I'm trying to say is that there's a lot of different ways of talking about it. And I think it's important, the words that we choose to say, to understand that internalized racism or internalized oppression, which is the way that racism affects people of color and people of the global majority, is different. but it comes from the same source. And it's, in a way, it's that we are reenacting the ways that we've been hurt by white supremacy upon ourselves and upon each other within our own communities. And so in that way, you could say everyone's racist, but I don't mean that. I'm not talking about what some people, when some people are like, oh, well, people of color are racist too because they hate white people. No, that's not what I'm talking about. You know, that is a kind of prejudice that also has its issues, but I think that, and that can be part of why it can be really beneficial to have separate support groups of people of color where they get to voice that kind of anger and have out those kinds of feelings that are really important to have, because it's important to get to be angry about the ways that you've been persecuted. For me, it's really important sometimes to have those feelings and, you know, get upset about the way my people were treated that then actually ended up causing us, some of us, you know, some of my ancestors, to whiten and try to marry lighter skinned people and try to act white and try to look white and try to dress white and try to become white. You know, in the Jewish world, for instance, there's now a whole lot of white Jews that think they're the only Jews. And it's like crazy to me because originally there was no white Jews. And, you know, a lot of Jewish people, even in the Ashkenazi sort of white Jewish world, to me, don't look that white compared to other European folks. And ultimately, we are all good. Like, you know, originally we were all, and still are, all Mother Earth's children. And that's really the important thing to remember. Yet through the process of decolonization, sometimes it's really helpful for people to get to have those feelings, as long as it's held within a container of like, this isn't the goal. This is just part of the process.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Yeah. It could be and it can be very tender. I mean, it's done with a lot of very specific boundaries and understandings in order to make it safe to do that, because, you know, and with the understanding that the goal is to love everyone and to love yourself. And there's also a lot of indigenous ceremonies like this where you can have big, hard feelings that you may usually avoid because you don't want to get sucked down that negativity, you know, place of anger or sadness or grieving. But actually, like, you know, by using fire, by using water, by using earth, you can discharge these feelings and really release them so that they're not in your body and so that they're not running your mind behind the scenes without you realizing. I think it's important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And for those of us to learn our traditions from our own lineage as well that are similar, like the sauna and other practices. So yeah, so we want to open it to other people to share, and if you have more questions too, just feel free to pop off of mute and ask your question, give your reflection. We have about 20 minutes.
I have a question. I don't know what my question is going to be actually, but I have thoughts that I've been mulling over for a few weeks. I was talking to someone at Smith the other day, and she was interviewing me about the new cultural center, the Mwangi Center. And then at some point I told her about my background, and she was like, oh, that makes sense, because you don't act like an annoying white person. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, because you're ethnic white. And I was like, okay. And then she was like, yeah, because in my understanding, whiteness is the total like separation from any cultural heritage, from any ethnicity, from any culture. And that is whiteness. And I heard you, Lily-Rakia, saying stuff like similar to that. And then I've also heard just anyone who's in a group that has somehow oppressed people darker than them to define whiteness. And so where I struggle is for people like me, it's actually a little bit, it's confusing, but easier for me to kind of have my own thoughts on, although I'm still struggling with that. But then I think about people from Scandinavia who are like international students who are from, or people from Belgium who are like, you know, blonde and European, but like don't relate to the white Anglo-Saxon New England culture. And I'm just like, and I don't know enough about the history of racism in not the United States, but that's where I get confused, because are they considered ethnic white because they're not like ripped from a culture like so many Americans who are like, I know these things, but I don't know anything about them. And I have no connection to them. Like, I don't know. Yeah, and then it's just hard. And then there's all these debates at Smith about, well, you can be an international student and still be racist, but then, you know, there's people like this Asian American girl who, and, you know, and then other people who've echoed this, who are like, well, whiteness is just the total just whiteness is just the total like separation from any culture. So I don't know how to talk about those situations with people without upsetting them, and I don't even know my own thoughts on them. So actually, I don't have a solid question. I have thoughts that I'm confused about.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I just want to honor how brave it is for you to just get out there with it and be like, this is what I'm struggling with. This is what I'm thinking about. What do you think? Because it's really important. And I think you're onto something, because part of the reality of the situation is there is no white, there is no black. There is white. There is, because of the social construct.
Right.
There absolutely is, because of the social construct. And it's a lot about perception. And it's actually a lot more complicated than that. Because, you know, just because somebody looks white, that's not all they are. Whether they're in touch with it or not, all of the cultures of who they came from are still within them, and they're still governing a lot about how they are and what they think is normal and who they are and how they interact with people. And same thing with, you know, Black folks and Latinx folks and everybody. You know, it's like we're actually all pretty mixed. And, you know, the thing that's different about a lot of European folks, I mean, depending on which country they're from, there certainly is Scandinavian indigenous people still today. And you know, if you think Native Americans are invisible, think about the native people of Europe. They're like, because the colonization happened even longer ago.
I learned about
people don't even talk about that. People don't even think about that, but there's Basque people, there's Roma people, there's all sorts of people. You know, there's the Celtic and the Druid. That was really long ago. In one of the conversations I've been having recently that I need to do more research about, because I hope there's someone out there that knows more about this, is like, you know, where did it even begin? I mean, I know there was intertribal war and people took each other as slaves, even in Native American nations, you know, before settler colonialism, and in, you know, in all different countries and continents. But, you know, it's, so we can't just romanticize, you know, either, or exotify Native cultures. But I think you're asking the right questions. And I think one of the sort of, I feel like this is going to be offensive, but one of the things that often happens in white culture is people, and I think this comes a little bit from, well, I think it comes from certain parts of Christianity, which I'm not trying to say there aren't awesome Christians out there, because there absolutely are. But I'm not talking about the people. I'm more talking about certain parts of the philosophy where people are trying so hard to get it right and to get really clear and defined, and so that they don't make a mistake, so that they don't mess up. And there is this idea, I think in particular in Protestant Christianity, is there's no repentance and forgiveness. It's like, if you mess up enough, you just go to hell. And that is a big part of the dominant culture that makes white people that have Protestant heritage, even if they're not into it anymore, and then for the rest of us that are within that dominant culture, feel like we need to get it right. We need to get it right. And it's just a lot more complicated than what is white. I think it's still a really important question. And so I think we need to keep asking it and keep being like, is it the lack of culture? But wait, there's people who are white or look white that are completely connected to this culture. But wait, what about these people? How does that, you know, it's like, okay, well, you know, this European, you know, person, for instance, this German person, let's just say, or this, you know, Danish person, they come to America, they very much pass for white. So they get all the privilege that white people in America get. They might have a little bit of like outsider immigrant something, but it's different than an immigrant from Sierra Leone or from Costa Rica. It's different. It's really different. And, and there, maybe they are connected to some really cool German, traditions and customs that they had in their family. And it's not the same as, and so it's not like the fact that a lot of people in America are so disconnected from their cultures, especially if they came as immigrants, even the white folks, a lot is because of people were running away from religious persecution. And so, whether it was slavery that disconnected people from their cultures, whether it was religious persecution and running away from that. There's a lot of people with Jewish heritage that want nothing to do with the religion because they're so traumatized because of the Holocaust or because of the pogroms. It's a big part of the history of people coming to America to escape the really hard things that, and so it's I feel sad for people who aren't connected to their culture, whether it's because of whiteness, whether it's because of slavery. It's all kind of part of the same issue. It's like kind of two sides of the same coin is the way I see it. And I think that like, these are all really good questions to ask. And it's just important to remember that like the dominant culture is going to make us think we have to get it right. And that like, there is one right answer, but like actually where you are is just perfect. Like in the struggle, in the asking, in the wondering, in the, and ultimately, like when we talk about these things, people are going to get offended and people are going to have feelings, and that's part of the process. And so figuring out how to create safe containers like this one to have these conversations is really important. And like just getting closer and more connected with people and building trust where you're like, okay, like if we're going to get real with each other, like we're probably going to offend each other. That's like part of having a real human relationship is like, it's going to get messy. Right. And so just like going into it, knowing that and being like, and even if I get confused and say something mean, I still love you. Can you remember that? And then, and then having that agreement with people is really important because, some of the ways that I've seen my racism and white privilege side of me come out the worst is when I've been getting close to someone and then just said something really stupid or did something really stupid and just either they checked me or I checked myself like, oh my God, like where did that come from? Oh, clearly that was not right. I'm so sorry. And that's actually how we've gotten closer is by making those mistakes. So I feel like I could go on and on, but I think you are like right in there. Just, keeping thinking flexibly, keeping asking the questions, keeping wondering like, what is the most respectful way to talk about this? Because if we get too PC about things, then we're just kind of beating around the bush. We're not really, it's good to try to be mindful and notice your level of privilege in a situation. But, like you said, like being Greek is like that. I have a lot of friends that are Greek that are just like, am I white? Am I not white? And like a lot of people who are people of color are like, you're not white. And then people who are white are like, oh yeah, you're white enough. Like, and so like, yeah, it's just more complicated than that, and the construct is there for an oppressive reason, not for a unifying reason. So it's not that we shouldn't acknowledge it and do the work that needs to happen to dismantle it. We need to. We can't just skip to color blindness, as you all know. But it is more complicated than that.
And I just want to say, because I went to Greece for a summer and I've traveled to some of these places where my heritage is from, like go to the place that your family's from if you can, because for me, that's changed my life, just being with that land and knowing that I can have that connection and that I already did, but something shifted when I was there and could feel that. So, to those out there. So
it can suddenly make a lot more sense about like, oh, I didn't even realize that's why I was like that. And that's not so weird. There's a whole lot of other people out there that are like that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. Kathy or Anne, anything you want to share?
Um, sorry, I'm at a kind of a loss for words. Um, I recognize that I have grown up in a very whitewashed culture and community, and I recognize that a lot of like just the programming that I received through that, and haven't had a lot of opportunity to work on it until until things like this come along my path and I get to actually go out there and say like, no, I want to engage with that. I'm gonna kind of break away from what was presented to me and what it continues to be common in my day-to-day reality, and seek out these connections and these conversations. And I really like what you said, Lily, about just giving permission for it to be hard to talk about in this context and in any context of a relationship. It doesn't have to be, on this kind of subject matter. Just giving permission and like knowing that there's still love and respect there is so foundational. I think in making work possible, harmonizing, between races, between anyone you might have a disagreement with. Yeah, and this conversation definitely inspires me to look back and see where I've come from historically, where my ancestors are from, and traveling to those lands. There was one more thing about the trauma that we harm each other because of the trauma that is in us. That's so true, and doing that work within ourselves and doing this work in community with other people who are willing to go there and feel those hard feelings is a big part of the process. So thank you for speaking on that too.
Thank you. Thank you for being willing to be vulnerable and with us on this journey. Yeah. I mean, the truth is, no matter where anyone's at on this journey, no matter how much you work on it, no matter how new or old it is to you, we're all in it together. And it's nobody asked to inherit this kind of stuff. Nobody asked to inherit racism and white supremacy. And so even though it's all of our responsibility to do what we can to dismantle it, it's not our faults. It's none of our faults, actually. Make sure that's clear. Like, not easy work, but I'm so grateful to be here with you all doing it.
Thank you for all the reminders and the lessons that you're living and that you're able to share with such clarity because of the work that you've done. Yeah, we need each other, and I feel this warmth for all of you. And I wonder if there's anything you want to share right now as we close.
Can I ask another question? I don't have to. I really don't. I can also just message you individually. I don't have to.
I think we're gonna try and end on time.
Great.
So yeah, I think we can all connect online otherwise, or I know that some of us don't live so far away from each other, so we could connect in person as well. And yeah. So Anne, I'm actually gonna put up the talking stick as we close, just to have it be a little ceremonial.
I'll just say Nyamagoa, great thanks, and Kononkwa, they're precious to me. Thank you for doing this work.
Thank you.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So thank you guys. Thanks everybody for thank you Lily for sharing so openly, so thoroughly of yourself. I should say open-heartedly of yourself. I feel like this have expanded my whole viewpoint of the whole of a lot of things that subtly, not that the bigger issues I'm not aware of, but there's all these dynamics that's going on in between that whole complexity of the big picture that kind of go under the radar sometimes. It kind of forced me to look at that, and I would really like to encourage all of us to really understand, and this is important for me to say quickly, to understand that underneath all of this costume that we're wearing, we are spiritual being having a physical experience, and we need to understand that although we are creation is helping us to evolve as beings, we are spiritual beings. So under all of this, we are beyond skin color, we are beyond time, we are beyond all this stress, all this lack, all this craziness that we experiencing, although it's part of the process for us to go through as experience. But underneath all of that, we are eternal being, and we have to go back to that space and understand that the truth of the matter of who we are is that within being, that awareness within, that have no color, that is the one energy, and that's beyond everything. So if we keep it on the level of the physical experience, of course it's going to go, it's so much, sometimes it gets really overwhelming, but understand that we are here today because we have the capacity. We took on this experience because we have the capacity to really make changes. We are spiritual beings. We are magical, so use our intention and our dynamic beingness to really, see the bigger picture, and to know that we have the capacity to really make the change that we really want. This is my concluding piece of the whole talk. That and I mean, like, I am working on a lot of stuff, but I got a lot of stuff. I have so much questions to ask still, but I know no time. But love to all of you, and just feel good to your inner being. Just connect, connect. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm. So much wisdom. So before we say good night, we invite us to do that connecting one more time. And I know the way for me, an easy way to connecting is through gratitude. And so we'll be in gratitude with the sound of the bowl for our guides and our guardians and our benefactors and teachers, all of us those who are supporting us and guiding us. And also gratitude for our ancestors, the ones who are from our own lineage, who created us and brought us into the world. Thank you. And also for the ancestors of the land where we are, may we remember their names, their languages, honor them, knowing that they are still there in body and in spirit, and may their cultures thrive, and may we continue to learn from them. So one last big thank you to Lily-Rakia, Chander, for joining us tonight, for all the many beings who've supported you to be here today. And thank you all for coming and sharing your presence and your wisdom and experience and vulnerability. This doesn't happen without people, without all of us. And like I said earlier, please spread it around. I'll put the post up on my personal page on Grace Between Races and Moving in Grace's YouTube page as well. And I want to give a little shout out as well for, I believe it's the 27th, in 2 weeks. We are having Toto Kisaku join us, who's becoming quite well-known playwright, actor, director, producer, very gifted individual who is from Congo, and he actually fled Congo after being persecuted for creating activist production that was about supporting the children on the streets of Congo, who he identifies with because he grew up on the streets partly, and also with an amazing mother who made it possible for him to get an education and become a well-known playwright, actor, activist all around Africa and Europe. And he has an incredible story, and he'll be joining us to share about his work and his story, and how we can understand art as activism and activism as art. So please join us in a couple of weeks or watch the video. All right, have a great evening and be well. Blessed be.